certifying badasses, one podcast at a time. A badass is mindful of their surroundings, has a positive mindset and a plan. A podcast for successful badassery with Kelly Orchard.
That's right. A badass is mindful of their surroundings and has a plan. I got a plan, and I'm very mindful. In fact, today we're talking about some mindfulness and positivity, and actually how sometimes positivity can be a bad thing, and a little bit more on that in just a minute. But I did want to share with you, okay, so I know you're like, what? We have 2 podcasts this week? I know. It's crazy, but the reason that I did that is because I can. It's like, I have a little bit of extra free time, but a lot more to say to my friends out there. And I think, once again, thank you for being so badass and keep coming back. Like I said the other day, I've noticed an increase in the downloads of the podcast, and I'm very appreciative of you. And I have this sign in my office that says "Be mindful," and I just changed it this morning because that's what I wanted it to remember. I've been reading this book called "Living in a Mindful Universe" from an author named Eben Alexander. And it's completely off the beaten track of what I not what I normally read, but of the business aspect of the things that I've read. And I was chatting with a friend not too long ago who spent some quality downtime away from her business. And one of the things that she mentioned that was the best thing about her trip was the amount of reading that she was able to absorb and enjoy. And I said, well, what were you reading? And she goes, definitely no goal-setting or business-oriented books. And I realized that, burnout is a real thing. And if we are constantly pursuing our goals and achieving, and we set the next goal to achieve as soon as we accomplish the one that we just achieved, that's where some of the burnout actually comes from. You cannot always be in training for a marathon. After a while, your body needs to rest, and so does your mind and your spirit. So when my friend had shared that, she didn't read one self-help book or a goal-setting book, she read novels. She read, more interesting things. I was very pleased. Now, I'm not reading self-help books anymore. I've written 5 self-help books, and my 6th is actually, you have no idea. It is so ready to be published. My editor has done a great job. I just have a couple of things I need to tweak, but I share the story with you about my the struggles that I'm having with my personal life a little bit, and I'm not really calling them struggles. There's just been some things that have had to been taken care of, and so some of these other things have had to been put on a back burner. And I joked around about yes, I had a lot of balls in the air for my business. And then those balls dropped because I had to take care of something else. And so I am the ringmaster of my own circus, and I'm all the performers as well. But I'm managing. But the factor of burnout and mindfulness are top of mind for me, as well as remaining patient. So I have a couple of articles I wanted to share with you today. Because, I am leaving very soon to go to Texas, and I'm going to have a completely fresh and different perspective for you when I'm out there. It's going to be a completely different mindset. And I do intend to be completely mindful from the moment that I leave on Friday morning. Not this Friday, but next Friday. As soon as I leave, I will be very mindful about how I'm feeling and where I'm going and what I'm going to do. I'm going to meet in person a new family member, my grandson. That's right. My daughter lives in Texas, and she just had a baby a couple of weeks ago. And this trip was planned months ago. It was planned months ago. And then leading up to getting closer and closer and closer, other things were starting to occur that I had to pay attention to and I had to address. And I had to be mindful. Now this is the practice of being mindful of my emotions about it all as well. And yes, oftentimes we do sort of need to allow our emotions to surface. Now we have to practice when the appropriate time is for those emotions to be surfacing now, don't we? And that's what I've got for you today on the podcast for successful badassery. Yep, that's right. Here we go. So remember the BADASS acronym. I constantly want to reinforce that it is for a positive attitude adjustment. And sometimes we just need some tools in our toolbox. And I've got all those tools for you. If you want to know more about my digital program, I got to tell you, being badass in 2022 is not going to be enough. You've got to get licensed to be badass. And one of the biggest challenges out there today is the mental health. Yeah, I don't need to tell you or you wouldn't be here. Mental health is the number one issue and concern in families and individuals, at schools, in businesses, at churches. Everyone's mental health has been significantly impacted by the recent events of the last couple of years. So what is the BADASS program? They are therapeutic tools that you can put in your toolbox. It's a digital, self-paced, do it on your own at home program with little mini lectures, videos like this. It's pretty much the same as what I do here, only I'm also giving you worksheets, and I'm explaining to you how to use those worksheets to improve your mental health and how you think about things. And I've implemented using cognitive behavioral therapy practices along with some solution focused, some sort of like coaching ideas, teaching you about positive mindset and how to rewire your brain for positivity. And I give you all of the tools that you need. And we go through the entire BADASS acronym. Remember, the B in BADASS stands for be yourself. But how can you be yourself if you don't really know yourself? So let's explore who you are, what you're interested in, what you like, what your past was like, what is your passion. If you don't know, how are you going to be yourself, right? I constantly learn about myself all the time. And I will share with you this, honestly, having my parents move in with me with all of their belongings, they are memorabilia and nostalgia from my growing up years. So along with my parents came all of my childhood memories with them. So I have been on a journey of exploration and learning more things about my upbringing and myself from an adult perspective, rather than just, we had these memories, but actually kind of addressing some of the issues and concerns. And it's been an interesting journey. And so continuing to learn is how you are going to know yourself when you want to be yourself. And the A in BADASS stands for attitude is everything. And you do need a positive one in order to succeed. But in a minute, I'm going to share an article with you, and I will put it in the show notes about how positivity can actually be toxic in the workplace. All right, so stick around. The D in BADASS is really important. Decide. When you decide to make a change in your life that you want to grow, that's a huge step. But then you've also got to stay dedicated to it and determined that no matter what, you're going to make these changes and not go back to the old behaviors that didn't serve you very well, or the old way of thinking that was actually detrimental to your mental health and your well-being. The second A in BADASS is what we're talking about today, awareness. You've got to be aware of your own emotions and the emotions of those around you. And I teach you how to do that by you implementing how to use nostalgia to become aware of your feelings and emotions. I teach you about positive psychology, about boundaries, and how to understand how you're feeling about things and setting those boundaries. And then we discussed things, what I've talked about before, about how moments in life are like leaves on a tree, that many, many, many will come and they will fall off, but so will new ones sprout up. So one bad moment does not ruin your whole life or your whole life tree. We go through an exercise with that. I also share with you lessons in patience from my book, Heart Lessons. So when you sign up for the BADASS program, you get licensed to be badass, and you actually get a diploma when you finish up. And I'm going to put that diploma in the graphic today because it, like I said, it is not going to be enough to be badass. You've got to get licensed to be badass. It'll give you way more credibility and all of the tools that you need. I mean, now, if you were going to hire somebody to work on your car or fix your house or, hey, be a doctor for you, help you with your physical care, wouldn't you want them to have a license to do that? So when you go around saying that so-and-so's a badass or so-and-so's a badass, you better make sure they're licensed. Gives them much more credibility. So yes, when you go through my program, you will have a great opportunity to get the diploma, the License to Be Badass diploma. It is a 8.5 by 11. I put it in a frame for you. It'll look really awesome on your wall. And when friends or loved ones come into your home or your office and they see that diploma along with all your other certifications, they're going, well, tell me more about being licensed to be badass. I mean, you cannot go wrong. You cannot go wrong no matter what you do with the License to Be Badass program. They are just simply therapy tools. So it is very therapeutic, even though it's not therapy. So if you've been thinking that maybe you need to go to therapy, but you cannot find a therapist, I got the ticket for you right here. And if you know friends who need therapy, but they can't find a therapist, send them this podcast and let me introduce myself. Hello, how are you? Need some help? I'm right here. All right. So yes, my badass tools do work. I do still spend each evening listening to some music and winding down my day. But I also do something, I have a bookend. I call it a bookend to keep myself balanced and to prevent burnout. And that's what we're talking a lot about. Now, one of the things is one of the tools that I use in awareness and even in the attitude is always be learning. Learning, when you continue to learn, it doesn't mean you have to go back to school to get a degree. It doesn't mean you have to start writing papers. It doesn't mean you have to start reading books that don't interest you. I want you to learn things that do interest you. And so this article I found in Psychology Today, I will put the link in the show notes, is called 8 Skills Master Learners Have. Master learners are fast and deep thinkers. Now, a few years ago, a long time ago, I did one of those Discover Your Strengths, a Strengths Finder test. And I have actually that link also in my Badass program, so you can find this as well as you learn to be yourself. And I learned that my number one strength is I'm a learner. I love to learn. So this article really resonated with me. So some of the key points are developing certain skills can help people to learn new things more quickly. To become a master learner, a person needs to be open to learning from a variety of sources and to thinking in new and different ways. And being able to assess their strengths and weaknesses can help someone to get better at learning throughout their life. So in the past 10 or 15 years, how to learn skills has fast become a popular productivity topic. In 2008, Malcolm Gladwell published Outliers, which brought to the so-called 10,000 hours rule into public consciousness. And that rule refers to the idea that on average, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. Of course, productivity gurus sprung up to help people cheat that number. But from a psychological perspective, what makes someone a master learner? This goes beyond learning fast. Being a master learner involves being both a fast and deep thinker. So let's break down what that involves. Number 1, you're willing to learn through experience. Learning through experience invariably brings up strong emotions like feeling confused, overwhelmed, frustrated, demoralized, surprised, relieved, proud, and exhilarated. Almost by definition, people are willing to learn from experience, possess self-knowledge about how to manage those emotions within themselves. At the most basic level, we know that people who are better at emotional granularity, that is, detecting and differentiating between different specific emotions, tend to be better at managing their emotional states. They're more resilient. Number 2, you're willing to learn from people you don't like. That's right. To maximize your learning, you'll be willing to learn from people who you don't personally like. We tend to get annoyed with people who don't share our view of the world or our personality, our background, our thinking style, our communication style. who aren't part of our tribal in-groups, etc. People who are different from us, either due to background or experience or personality, will tend to approach problems differently. That's why exactly they offer opportunities for us to learn from them. All right, number 3, you're willing to try out different thinking styles. All right. We all tend to have a dominant thinking style. For example, some people are more promotion focused. They focus on what they can gain. And some are more prevention focused, focusing on preventing losses, mistakes, or things going wrong. Being a master learner requires being able to be flexible and adapt your thinking style, depending on the problem at hand, rather than always sticking to your dominant natural style. And you're willing to layer learning. This author was saying when they were writing their books, include section giving readers the advice to read the book again after 6 months. Why? When you first read something or watch a video, all the information is new to you and particular problems are top of mind. When you review the same material again, you'll come back to it with a different mindset. Kelly Orchard's Apple a Day does this exact thing for you. I wrote those, believe it or not, I started writing them in 2014. It took me 2 years to get through writing one for every single day. Why did it take me 2 years? Well, I took a break in 2015 for a few months. And then I picked them up again, and then I finished the series out. But what I have learned from that, and then I published the books later. The books came a couple of years later after that. And so now the books have the journal page attached to each of the apples. And there's 4 books because I've got one for every season of personal growth. Kind of goes along with the seasons of spring, summer, fall, and winter. That's what the books are about. And that's what these do. They help you layer your learning because you read the apple one time and you write down your thoughts. Come back to a year later, you're going to have grown. So those are just 4 of the 8. So I'm going to continue to put the link in the show notes for you. But the other things that master learners use are you're willing to learn through different modes and channels. That's, for example, you learn by reading, or you learn by hearing, or you learn by watching, and maybe you learn by doing the hands-on, different channels, rather than taking a formal class or what have you. But I do have some ways for you to learn on a different channel right here. And then deep reflection and the unfocused wandering mind. Oh, that's right. That's like stress-free productivity. Do that with my writing. Master learners don't just become good technicians. They become thought leaders. Learning sparks their creativity. How? They think about what they learn in deep ways that aren't tightly focused on the narrow topic. That's why I talk about broadcast and I talk about psychology, and I bring the mechanics of both into each other. And that's how, and this is a process that I have layered my learning. So you see the example here. And then another, your approach to learning with your learning objectives in mind. What is it that you want to learn? See, I have no interest in learning how to fix my Mustang. But I did focus on learning how to drive her with a masterful skill. So in the learning process, what is it that you want to learn? Master learners don't follow someone else's learning plan. For example, they don't use one language learning app for hundreds of consecutive lessons without branching out. They develop their own learning plan based on their own specific learning objectives. All right. And then you know what your strengths are. And so, like I pointed out, I did the Strengths Finders quiz, and there is a link in this article that you can follow to find more information about 8 skills that master learners have. But here's another one that I wanted to find with you, which we were talking about emotions and the workplace and how positivity can actually be detrimental. This article I found in The Atlantic, actually, and it says the emotion that's missing from the workplace Yeah. Sadness is a central part of our lives, yet it's typical to ignore it at work, hurting employees and managers alike. Recent virtual talk that this author read, the moderator had asked attendees in the chat box to, kind of chime in how you're feeling, what's going on. And emphatically, everyone was productive, energized, thrilled to be here. And these are all wonderful things, but what are the chances that these responses were an accurate representation of an entire team's emotional life? They seemed more indicative of what the Harvard Medical School psychologist and management scholar Susan David calls the tyranny of positivity that dominates most workplaces. More than 2 years into the pandemic, that has revealed the painful side of reality. Many employees remain discouraged from sharing difficult feelings and experiences at work, creating a culture of emotional repression that hurts workers and managers alike. Fortunately, change seems to be underway. A Harvard Business Review now regularly runs articles on the virtues of compassionate leadership. Last year, the organizational psychologist Adam Grant devoted an entire episode of his work-life podcast to the idea we should allow sad days, not just sick days. Management scholars have even started to highlight the unique advantages of leaders who express sorrow. In a business culture that once demanded positivity, a new set of norms is newly emerging. The article goes on to tell you about a specific study that was done. But here, creating workplaces that make space for feelings and emotions may require rethinking ideals of leadership itself. Researchers know that emotions bosses express affect workers' perception of how powerful they are. Those who behave angrily during challenging situations are typically seen as more influential than those who react sadly. Yet a 2009 study by the management professors Juan Madera and D. Brent Smith found that showing sorrow rather than anger sometimes creates better outcomes for leaders, including stronger relationships with their employees and being viewed as more effective. So, building these practices into the workplace culture can be especially helpful. In 2011, a group of management scholars from the Compassion Lab published a study on the billing unit of a community health system in the Midwest. The department workers had such things that they turned around, they shared their troubles, and they turned out that they were good not only for their mental health, but also for the business. And during the 5 years prior to the study, this bills collected more than twice as fast as before. And by the time of the study, it was close to beating the industry standards. The turnover rate in the unit was only 2%, compared with an average of 25% across all the health system, and significantly higher rate across the medical billing industry. And why? Because they had compassionate leadership, and they were allowed to express their feelings. So, in private discussions with executives and managers, they raise one recurring objection to these ideas. If everyone is encouraged to air their difficult feelings, won't this sap workers of their ability to get things done and make offices depressing? But this growing area of management research suggests otherwise, showing the value for both productivity and employee well-being of workplaces where staff are free to name their emotions and experiences, both the bitter and the sweet. And though American businesses still have a long way to go, managers may one day be able to kick off meetings with a call to share how everyone is feeling and actually expect honest answers. Now, in the field that I work, it's all about sharing your feelings and emotions. And that is what I do. And I see people shift and change their perspective when they're heard and when they're given compassion. And to be honest, the other day, I had a call that troubled me regarding my personal life. And because normally when I'm doing therapy, when I'm in a full day of therapy, I have the ability to compartmentalize and set things aside, and things aren't as important, and I can move them around. But this particular day last week, it was extremely stressful for me, and I had to be addressing and answering these calls and these emails promptly. So I was doing it in between sessions. And I actually had a bit of a tearful moment with a client. And it was about me, not them. But the response was very compassionate toward me, but also the realization this client realized that I too am human. And the comment was, "Oh, you're not a robot. You mean you do have problems and thoughts and feelings about things." I had actually showed my vulnerability in a moment of having an emotion that I was mindful about. And so I wanted to share that with you and be completely transparent and authentic with you. You know, sometimes things are a performance and we put on a show and we will hide our feelings when it's not appropriate. There are appropriate times to share your feelings and emotions. And leadership in business, your business will improve when you adopt a compassionate leader mentality. And if you need help with that, I'm here for you. And I do have the program for you, and I do have the coaching ability. I show compassion all the time. Today, I was really thrilled that I had the opportunity to take a cup of coffee to one of my associates here at Michelle's place. No, I don't work for her. I don't work for Michelle's place. I am a tenant here. But when I saw her coffee on the counter in the kitchen, I knew she'd forgotten it. I knew that she had set her coffee to be made and then gotten busy with something else. And since I had the time and I saw her coffee there, I sought her out and I delivered her coffee to her. It was some simple, compassionate thing to do, but it made me feel good also. It's little things like that you're going to do that are going to shift your mindset. Remember, we said layer the learning. It's little things that you layer, that you do every day that's going to shift how you feel. And so be aware of what you're feeling and the emotions of those around you. And you can check out those links in the show notes. And if you want more information about the License to Be Badass program, I've got the website right there for you. Just go to the website and check it out, and I'll put that in the show notes as well, the licensetobebadass.com. But you know what? Like I said, hey, it is not going to be enough to be badass in 2022. And I know you're badass because you keep coming back. You got to get licensed to be badass. So if you are seeking therapy or you feel that you could use some assistance in something going on in your life and you can't find a therapist because we're all really busy and booked up, I've got the alternative for you. It's very therapeutic. It may not be therapy, but it's therapeutic. And it does include some coaching calls with me as well. So buckle up for the ride. Next week, I am headed to Texas, but I'm going to have a couple of podcasts before that. So I'll let you know how I'm strategizing my journey, because I am driving there. That's right. I'm driving there. So it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. I love road trips. I'll tell you more about that. But in the meantime, have a very badass day and take it away, Mr. Ocean.
Hop on the bus to Badassville. When the bus arrives at Badassville, you discover it's not a place, it's a state of being. Snag your Badass Habits ebook. Get started on your badass journey. Go to licensetobebadass.com.